Hello and welcome to a fall morning in my home. Although we are technically still at the end of summer, it feels like a beautiful fall morning. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ilsa. I'm a mama of 6, currently homeschooling my 3 younger children, doing all things homemaking, from scratch cooking. And today on this beautiful fall-like day, I have decided to spend the day baking some homemade treats for my little ones and perfecting my sourdough bread. So first I had to feed my sourdough starter, which I've had in my fridge for a few weeks now. And if you've never dealt with starter, just know that you can keep it in your fridge and take it out, feed it, and it magically comes back to life. It is amazing what sourdough starter can do and all the delicious treats you can bake with it. So here I'm using a half a cup of all-purpose unbleached flour, and I'm adding it into my starter after I've discarded the top layer, which has a small residue of fluid into it, and I just dump that, and then I scoop out the discard into a jar that you can use to make cupcakes, brownies, pancakes, all delicious stuff. So after I did that, I then added the half cup of all-purpose flour, and I added a half a cup of water, and I just gave it a really good stir. I use a wooden stick in order to do the stirring. It works a lot better, and a lot of people say not to use metal to stir it, something about the chemicals in metal and sourdough. I don't really know, but that's what I've been told. And I figure, why not, before it starts rising up and bubbling and getting all beautiful, why not transfer it into a clean jar? Because then you could see the magic happen when it starts to raise and bubble up, and it just looks amazing. So now what I'll do is I'll let it sit on the counter in a warm area, which it's going to be pretty warm because my oven is going on. We'll be doing some baking, so I'll put my discard in the smaller jar back in the refrigerator when I want to use it to make some other treats. But my starter will sit on that counter for a few hours until it rises up and I can start making the bread. My first to do is chocolate chip cookies. I have not made them in a few weeks because I'm trying to eliminate sweets from my diet, and I do have celiac, so I have to be very careful which baked goods I decide to eat or to make gluten-free so that I'm allowed to enjoy them. But here I'm making chocolate chip cookies for my little ones. They love them, and I like to make anywhere from 24 to 36 so that they'll last throughout the week, so that they can pick on as yummy treats. And as the cookies are baking in the oven, I have decided to get started on my children's next favorite treat, which are chocolate chip brownies, and they're super simple to make. And my biggest tip for making brownies is to underbake them. Brownies are always so delicious when they're crispy on the outside and soft on the inside, and if you underbake them by a few minutes, that is the trick to getting that perfect texture. So all the recipes will be linked below, and you'll be able to make these yummy recipes at home. Not have enough brownie mix to make 2 full trays of brownies, but here's a little trick that I learned while working at a restaurant. If you do not have enough mixture for the entire tray, you just add some water so that when you bake it, your tray does not burn, and it works great. My favorite breakfast to make is silver dollar pancakes because I make a huge batch and freeze whatever's left over, and my older son will just take them out and warm them up, and he can have that for breakfast or for a snack. It really comes in handy. And all of these items that I baked and cooked only took me an hour and 15 minutes. Now the bread, on the other hand, I started my starter this morning, and the bread takes quite a while. I knew that I was not going to have this bread done for dinner, but my plan was to have it done for the next day, the morning, so that I could have it for my kids' breakfast and even make sandwiches for lunch for them. So I took my time, and I love following this recipe. I will link the creator below. She is amazing and has so many good recipes to use with sourdough starter. I am not a perfectionist when it comes to bread baking. I do my best, and I just try to make it look pretty and taste good, but I definitely enjoy making bread. It's just something about creating something with your own 2 hands that your family enjoys, and you know all the things that you're putting into it. You know all the ingredients. There's not many additives into them, and it just makes you feel really good when you're serving it to your family. So that was the first timer I set for 30 minutes to set out the flour and the water aside to let it rise and kind of just combine together. Here I am putting my starter, which I'm going to add in to the dry mixture. And then I'm just going to get my hands dirty, because although there are so many utensils you can use, for some reason when you use your hands, it just turned out to be better. So I poured in my starter that was bubbly and sitting out for a few hours. It did the work it needed to, and here I'm just gonna get in there. I am trying not to really deflate the flour or try to create gluten into the sourdough mix, so I'm just gonna mix it a little bit, cover it. I set my timer. I know that the creator of this sourdough bread does not use timers, but I'm really new into making bread, so I'm setting my timer for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to stretch and fold, which I did 6 times. The first 3 times were every 15 minutes, and then the last 3 times were every 30 minutes. So after the last stretch and fold, I allowed it to sit for 30 minutes, and then I placed it on the counter over some flour. I then cut it into 2 pieces because this recipe makes 2 loaves. After that, I put it into a basket with some flour. I wrapped both bowls up, and allowed to rest overnight in the refrigerator. The creator of this recipe says that you can let it ferment for up to 14 hours in your refrigerator. The longer that it ferments, it will have more of a sour taste. I took it out after 12 and a half hours because I wanted to have it ready for my son's breakfast today. So here we are on the next day when I removed it from the refrigerator, placed it on parchment paper with some flour so it won't stick. I wanted to try to create a pumpkin, so with some twine, I just tied it into as many perfectly shapes as I could. I then took out my blade and I started to make tiny little decorative designs in there. I am no artist, but I did my best. So what it calls for is once the Dutch oven is hot, because you have to preheat it at 500 for 30 minutes. You then take your loaf, your bread with your parchment paper, place it inside, covered, back in the oven at 500 for 20 minutes. And that pot is really hot. And then after you remove it from the oven, you take off the lid and place it back in the oven for another 25 minutes. And once you take it out of the oven, you're going to have a beautiful brown top loaf, and I'm super excited about how this one turned out. This is the first time I've ever tried to be creative and make a pretty design.